going live. I tried to do this the other day and it didn't upload for whatever reason, so I'm repeating this. This is your lordotic posture and it's part 3 of 3. Therefore, you should have had number 1, number 2, and this is your third and final one in this moment, okay? I'm using the yellow band. The yellow band will go around the back of the pelvic area. And once your yellow band's there, you're holding it in such a position. I will keep changing the view that you get of this. Hold it in such a way that there's some tension without your arms locking out. You want your feet in a general turnout. Remember, we always go 10 to or 10 past the hour. So you're inhaling and exhaling, and then on the breath out, you'll find yourself into that wide squat, inhale back up. I'll remind you of what lordosis is. It's an increased curve of the lumbar spine, the lower back. There are 5 vertebrae there. And when it's increased and it's true lordosis, it's therefore very tight in there. The muscles are short and quite anchored. If the lower back curve is increased and those muscles tight, then the hip flexors at the front of the body are also hugely tight. Now, as we go down and up in this position here, we're going to get the body going initially. I've got you in wider legs to open the hip a little bit more. So your hip flexors are frontal. They're almost like 180 degrees around the front of the hip. So we're not interested in just parallel, we are interested in this opening the hip so that we lose some of that tension. You'll notice that my arms aren't going anywhere. I'm just keeping them. And what I do every time I squat is I feel the sit bones or the bum cheeks go against that band. Now that I'm kind of moving up and down, the breathing going, obviously inhaling down, we tend to say exhaling. Remember that the thighs want to pull out over the sides of the feet so that your arches stay active and the ankles are part of the recruitment stability. And therefore the thigh bones pull out sideways and your knee joint is placed over the ankle and your hip opens. Next time you're down, stay. I'm going to move my position again. So you're down in this shape, you stay where you are. Now this is the genius of kind of having a band feedback. You're breathing in and out, check you're not gripping your bum cheeks. By all means, core connect, pelvic floor, navel, spine, hold your shape. The band is helping you feel the obliques work harder. Because if you relax your upper body, you can do no abdominal work if you choose. If you take tension through the upper back, the rhomboids, you suddenly find your obliques are working. That's hip bone to rib cage. We're going to do our pelvic tilts here. You'll breathe in as you prep. Exhaling then, draw up on pelvic floor. And use that pelvic tilt with internal obliques and pelvic floor transverse wall. Breathing out. And the band will give you a feedback. It takes the stress out of the hip flexors even more so because the obliques are now doing a great job and therefore allows the pelvic relationship to the legs to find its partner that's weak, which is your hamstring and oblique area. So we're doing hamstrings and obliques really as we do this pelvic tilt using pelvic floor. The next time you find yourself in your neutral, that means you've got your normal lordotic curve, not your exaggerated one. You'll go down and up a bit. The sense of pushing your bottom into the band matters. If you press your bottom against the band, remember, helps you stabilize using obliques. Lordotic person, you tend to have long obliques in the lower area. In other words, they're weaker. Just basically, we need them to know their job. So I'm now pulling my thighs wider, keeping my upper back connected through the mid-rhomboid. Therefore, my chest is open, my collarbones are open. And the band is a sensory connection. The elasticity in it helps me kind of spring up and down a bit more, and it's assisting me with a better technique. The next time I go down, I'll go as far as I can, breathe in, exhale, pelvic tilt. That's pelvic floor, navel, spine, and the oblique wall. And continue that pelvic tilt, and the band helps me stand up in a more neutral posture. You'll bring your legs together. We'll lose the band for a moment. Remember, we've said the Lord tends to need more help from postures. This position here is going to use the blue ball. You're going to use your traditional squat and a bar or a chair. The ball will go behind whichever leg you want to choose, at which point you want to feel that you've centered the body. Thighs are together. We're now interested in the hamstring, knowing how to shorten and stay connected, contracted. Breathe in, find the squats, both legs are together. Breathe out and stand up. Keeping the breathing muscles, making the trunk stability work. The bar is a bit like your yellow band really. If you've got yourself grounded through the upper body connecting to a surface, you can more or less ask what you want of the trunk. 2 more going down and up. This is you waking up your glute and the hamstring on the standing leg. Stay. So the hamstring on that ball leg is nice and tight. You're going to use that tension to lift that leg and lower it back to where the thighs are. Exhale and inhaling. You've just got 3 more. We're going to kind of do 5-ish of these. If you don't core connect as you send that leg up and pull it back, then you'll go into your lordosis because the pelvis will move. The next time the leg's up, leave it up. We're now going to straighten out the standing leg and then come down to knees kissing. Exhale. You're working through both legs now. Use your breath out to pelvic floor, navel to spine, so that as you're pushing the ground away and pressing your heel to the ceiling, you're actually facilitating a good connection with the end range hamstring on the standing leg and the shortened hamstring on the moving leg, as in it's floating up and down, and working therefore without your hip flexors taking over. 2 more. 1 more. And let that go. So that should have woken up everything here and shortened the belly of the hamstring there. Remember on the lordosis, the hamstring, that's the back of the thigh to the back of the knee, tends to be, it likes being long and weakish. It doesn't really like being contracted and lengthened and contracted and lengthened. So the knees are together. Find your first squat, center the posture, and then up you go, down you go. So exhale, push the ground away, keep the thighs together, breathe in. Your lordosis will have required you to pelvic tilt slightly. Now if you want to pelvic tilt, all the other postures will be out of whack. But when we're doing this, we only use pelvic tilt. The lordotic has to pelvic tilt to find a neutral curve. The other postures have not that issue. So don't always wait for a teacher in a group session to say, okay, I'm tilt under, because it's only the lordosis that needs that constant reminder to do a pelvic tilt. Next time you're down, stay. If you think you may have lost your pelvic connection, then do a pelvic tilt. And if there was somewhere to go, that's great. And then go and find your neutral. If you end up in your lower back, then you need to moderate and just pelvic tilt a bit more. But don't overly tuck that bottom under. Heel to the ceiling and then knees together. So now you center the chest. You're pushing with both heels. It's just that one leg moves and one leg grounds itself so that the body knows to go for your bum, abductus areas on the standing leg, and the mobilizing of those muscles, hamstring, glute on the moving leg. The next time then we take that leg up, stay. Now straighten out the standing leg and then come and crouch back into your kind of scooter hinge hip moment. You don't need to do these fast. Just slowly work at flexing at the hips and expanding with the hamstring glute. You're putting tension in a muscle group, that's your hamstrings and glutes, where it doesn't really like to offer its assistance because the hip flexors at the front of the hip take over. It's perfect activity. 2 more, and you'll notice the difference from one side to the other. 1 more. Pull the thighs together and take that ball away. You could do those exercises several times. Go back to the beginning again. I'm going to move on for the sake of education. So the first thing we're going to do is find your yellow band again. And with the glutes nicely activated, we'll lie on our backs. By all means use a head pad. As a lordotic posture, you definitely really need a head pad. Take the band and place it around your feet. The band wants to be flat in this moment. You'll hold the band near the knee joint. Initially, pull your knees in, breathing in and out, get a sense of where an imprint of your high to low waist is. Remember, as a lordosis structure, you don't want to overly tuck up that joint. You want to get a generalized lengthening out of your curve that's quite strong. You'll know it's right because it will feel lovely. All right, I'm holding this band by my knees. I'm asking my rib cage to find more flexion, as in the previous video. On the breathing out then, it's like doing bend and stretch on the reformer. I'm going to exhale, make sure I keep a pelvic imprint as I stretch my legs away. Inhale, slowly pull them back in. Exhaling. I'm pushing with my heels, not necessarily with my toes. So I've got a relatively flat foot, and my inner thighs are tight together. The band, my elbows are tucked into my sides, stopping my upper spine, shoulder area round. And by using pelvic floor, navel to spine, my flexors are very, they're just underplaying, which is great. If you haven't got the band, doing this, I can guarantee a lordotic person will start to scream about their hip flexors. So the next time your legs straighten out, leave them out. Don't lock them out, leave them out. Now go back to noticing whether or not you could tilt your pelvis anymore to get an imprint. Keep your arms where they are, because now breathe out and let the rib cage, oblique area, add to your load. Exhaling, draw up, bend the rib cage over, navel to spine. Inhaling, roll the shoulder blades back down. Breathing out. You really must breathe to get your spine more mobile. It's like giving WD-40 to the spine. If you're doing this activity accurately, you'll feel as though the last two ribs with the spinal column parts joined in, imprint. So here, I can feel the imprint below the bra strap, below the scapula, and into a high waist. Stay in that imprint. You're breathing in 2, 3, 4, and breathing out 2, 3, 4. The emphasis isn't on your lower back being dragged under, it's on your rib cage flexing, crown of the head to the ceiling, collarbones wide open, and the breath creating space and mobility in the spine. And 2 more moments breathing, 1 more, and then come back down. You're now going to let the legs lower, and when you think they can't go any lower, ask the pelvis to imprint more. In other words, if it's shifted, you ask it to go back to imprint, then let the legs lift up again. The band allows you, use your breath out, to reach the legs away. We're now training the lower fibers, the abdominals, and lift the legs back. Inhaling, exhale. The need to pelvic tilt, in other words, pelvic floor internal oblique, that's how you see that, is massive. You're just going to do 1 more. When I take my legs low, I'm supporting the weight of the legs with the band to stop my hip flexors taking over the move, because right now I don't want them to. Okay, people, let both legs stay up in the air. You're now going to take whichever leg you want out of the band. I've got my band around my right leg and in my right hand, and I'm putting my left hand under my head. Breathe in. Exhaling, curl up, keeping hold of the band and the elbow sides. Lower the leg away, doesn't matter which one, and inhale, exhale, pull it up as you lower the other leg away. Breathe in. Notice the imprint and the symmetry and how low your leg allows itself to go. So the flexor when the leg is down is passive. And when the leg without the band is down, the flexor has to be active on the lifting phase. So we're going lowering, breathing in, breathe out, core connect. So this abdominal work takes some of the tension out of the flexors, allowing them to learn to let the pelvis stay in neutral or imprint and not bullying out the activity. By curling up, we're inviting the whole of the oblique to find a shortened range. Okay, the next time you find your band leg to the sky and your other leg down, rest the other leg down to the floor. That gives you an actual stretch. Now my right leg is going to come over towards the left, and I'm holding the band and allowing a stretch. Now, the lighter the band is now, the more stretch you'll get through what we call a neural, that's muscular and nerve system, fascia, ITB band. I haven't let my hip roll off the floor so much as allowed my thigh bone to open out the side of the joint. The other part of the structure is you get tight around the hip, so this should help that. Okay, slide that leg up. We're going to take you to your single leg stretch with the other leg in the strap. So find symmetry. I'm now left leg in the strap, holding the band. Absolute symmetry. Right hand goes under my head. I know that I've got equal load behind both sacral areas and the lumbar. Exhale, curl. And inhale. Exhale, lower the leg away. Breathe in. Exhale and switch. Pushing against the band. Breathe in. Exhaling. Inhale, crown of the head to the ceiling. So as you push, use your breath out to fire up the oblique, to resist twisting or arching your back away. The constant drawing of belly button to spine, using the breathing muscles to find your trunk stability is all that this is about. You're going to do one last one. You'll finish with the band leg up in the air. You'll lower your other leg to the floor, hopefully without losing the lumbar connection or the sacrum certainly. You're then taking the leg that has the band around it over your body, so my left leg's now going over towards the right, and you know the difference for me, I'm tighter in my left hand system all the way through from the heel to the pelvis than I am in my right. So I feel a lot more stretch. It goes to the back of my knee. So the sense of tingling, still core connect, is the muscles and the nerves getting a great stretch. The fascia, connective tissue is being influenced too, okay? You're not holding that rigidly. You're letting it feel a little bit of a bounce. You're breathing, because that's how you hydrate in these extremer positions, more extreme positions, and then you're going to let that go. So from that position there then, we're going to go on to a side position using the yellow bands. Now, if I wasn't filming, I would have kept the band around that leg. So, I am though, so I'm just going to have the struggle of coming up. And again, you're holding the band neatly, as it were. You can use your head cushion or your hand. Find your underneath leg into the box shape. Remember lordotic, pelvic tilt, and your waist on the side you're laying is not on the floor. Bend the leg so that you end up with it lined up over your underneath leg. So now I've got tension on the band, I've got my elbow against my hip bone, the hip bone stacked on top of the other hip bone. Breathe out and push that leg away. The duality of this activity means if you work the obliques by keeping your elbow bent, keeping the band static, you're likely to keep the pelvis in perfect neutral using the obliques, whilst as the leg bends, the hamstrings shorten, the flexors work minimally, but as your leg pushes away with the heel, your hamstring has to learn to push, and then you're controlling the band position back. All the while, this is about your hip, keeping your hip from being overpowered by movement coming from the flexors, rather than from a contribution of hamstrings, glutes, and abductors. Okay, so that's what this is about. Exhaling. If you do this without using pelvic floor breath connection, then you're not really doing as much good as really this is meant to be giving. So see again, this is a hydration, asking for the flexor system to be less dominant in your life and reminding the brain to go for hamstring glutes, Remember, it'll only work if you're in neutral. I'm going to keep my leg there now. By keeping my leg there, I know that my waist's off on the side I'm lying. I've still got the same tension on the band. I'm going to lower and lift. Exhale. The thigh bone moves, not the hip, and I'm getting a really good length through the flexors because the hip is now open, but because I'm holding the weight of my leg, they're allowed to be relaxed more in the right way, and then other muscles around this sphere here able to take that connection. Now the band again, because it's elasticy, gives it a lovely feel, as though I'm creating space between my femur and the joint that is the hip joint, that ball and socket area. Breathing, exhale, inhaling, exhale, and stay with the leg down. If you can tilt anymore, so ask the pelvis to tip. If it's got any range left in it, it will. If you'd inadvertently gone back into lordosis, you'll have just corrected it. But this therefore becomes a lovely stretch, generally for this ball and socket joint, and then let that go. Okay, flicking over to the other side. I suspect if you got into a little rhythm of this, you could do this side leg work straight after the single leg stretch and then come back and do it the other way around. But for the aid of education, I've kind of split the moves up. So you're here lying on your side, you've got your box shape, you're not rushing to find your alignment, you're finding it and then controlling it. The band is held above the knee, so I've got my knees level. Remember the pelvic tilt, not a flattening right under, but a tilt, elbow to your hip bone, exhaling, push, and inhaling back. You're tuning into the band, increasing in its tension, and noticing that the tension comes from the back of the sit bone all the way through, further up the body to the oblique. So you have to get your obliques connecting as your leg bends and extends. Remember, think of the heel as offering the movement. If you're unsure whether your hip's moving, pop your hand on your hip for a moment. Maybe lighten the band. So I feel as though my left hip bone wants to roll back always, and it has. And that felt awkward almost. You know what feels good? It's allowed to feel challenging, almost a little bit quivery, but it can't feel twingy, and it most certainly won't be in the front of your hip. I can't really demonstrate pointing at things because the tension I'm creating on the band, which is a part of my oblique connection, is having to moderate the band more than anything. I would say with this exercise, it really is worth persevering with to make sure you've got all of the right shapes going on at the pelvis and in your alignment. I'm going to next time keep the band out. It's going to stay there. Now I know this left hip bone just wants to roll back, so I'm having to really work hard at keeping it from doing that. The legs lowering and back up. Remember, outside of following this, it's worth you playing with each exercise and making sure that for every detail you get a true neutral. Now as I push my leg up and down now, I can feel the space as it should be in the hip. I clearly have dysfunctional elements to my left hand side because the bending and reaching into this band just didn't feel as good as the right hand side, which is fine because by doing this I'm targeting a reorganisation, a reactivation of the muscles that make up my thigh bone to pelvic joint, and ask my obliques to play a true role in helping stabilise this joint rather than thinking the flexors are going to do it. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more. Paying attention, the underneath side of the waist off. And as I go down this next time, I'll stay. So as I hold this relatively active stretch and draw upon pelvic floor navel to spine, the active element to it is I'm pushing my leg away from my hip. My hip feels really open. I'm pelvic neutral. I'm not pelvic imprint, I'm pelvic neutral. It might feel like imprint to a lordotic, but it certainly has still got my lumbar curve, which you do need. You just don't need the excessive one. Breathing, breathing, breathing. And then I'm slowly going to let that go and take my foot away from the band. Finally, to finish off this moment, you'll go to your hands and knees. You feel heat around this whole area, not the lower back, but around the side hips. And we're going to our child's pose. So you breathe deeply in, breathing out. Remember, you push the floor away and start this. Taking yourself as far back towards your heels as your knees allow, and then reach your arms forward. So the whole lengthening out of the lordosis, tailbone, through the lower back, through to the mid back, the high waist. It will on a lordotic look flat, but feel really comfy as it's lengthening out. The breathing in as you breathe your rib cage forced against the thighs. The breathing out, shrinking away from the thighs. Shoulders can release away from the neck. And as you allow the posture, the spinal area, to have its space with the breathing happening, you then find yourself ready. Slide the hands to the knees. Start to use your upper body to push the posture up. Now the lordotic usually goes straight into the lordosis at this point. So hands on thighs, pelvic tilt to pull yourself up onto your knees. All right, that's all we have time for, and that completes the series. So you now have 3 parts for the increase of lordosis. Remember, you can actually use every posture video for every posture. The cueing, though, is specific for lordotics, but the relevance of all of the activities are for all people everywhere. All right, hope you enjoy these bite-sized moments and that they allow you to practice your Pilates more consistently. It's a goodbye from me, and have a lovely weekend.